pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger and roll with Atlantic. Flight downside of speed off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.
All right, come on, little bar, jump for me. That looks like it's working. Chat, you know what time it is. It's time for this weekend's exciting installment of NSF Live. John Galloway for NASASpaceflight here from the, not really the studio, I guess. Just hanging out here at home today like everyone else is, except for Jack and Michael, who were out of Vandenberg for that launch that we saw earlier. Let me know in chat if you can hear and see me. I see a bunch of 5x5s. I don't even have to ask anymore. Y'all are fantastic. Thank you for that. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So we should be ready to get going here. You know us, we don't have a crew of 1,000 people working on these streams, so we always start the streams with a technical check, and y'all are our remote studio crew, letting me know that you can hear me and see me and stuff. So let us hop over today. We are going to be talking about this. But do we have our special guest / subject matter experts? Thomas and Chris, are y'all here?
We're here.
I am indeed.
I mean, I see the video feeds. I hope it's not like recorded or anything. Y'all, today we will be joined by our subject matter experts, reporters, editors, whatever you want to call them. In this corner, Chris Gebhardt, the assistant managing editor for NASASpaceflight. Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How are you, Doss?
I need a microphone that like comes down from. Wait, I got one. Hang on. Look, where did I put that? Yes, yes. Look, I can actually have this microphone like drop down from above and be like, and in this corner, Thomas Burghardt. There's not a. Anyways, Thomas Berghardt, reporter, live stream host.
It's wireless, Doss. It's wireless.
That's why there's a delay. There's latency in there. Thomas, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Back for another stream. We long time no talk, everybody. We were on for Sentinel launch this morning, and now we're back for NSF Live.
Whew, it's a lot of streams going on, that's for sure.
It was almost 3. We almost had Starlink tonight, but that's tomorrow now, so we can rest a little bit.
Yeah, is that officially like out for tomorrow?
Yeah, that's tomorrow.
That's
yeah.
tomorrow. So SpaceX going for the double header there, but Starlink going another 24 hours till tomorrow. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So for today, let's see what we're going to be talking about for today. I think that this screen should have the right thing up. Let's see. Did I do it right? I did. What are we talking about today, y'all? What is our plan here, Thomas?
Sure. We got a bunch of Starship news as always. SNA getting closer and closer to its high altitude flight. We've got some news out of Rocket Lab out of New Zealand. The return descender mission, where Rocket Lab taking a huge step towards making Electron reusable with a soft splashdown under a parachute for their first stage. We'll talk about that. We also had the hugely important Crew-1 mission earlier this week, so we got a whole lot to talk about.
Crew-1, you say? I mean, I think we've got Crew. Oh, that's not Crew-1.
Oh no, that's a seagull
no.
actually, Doss.
That was a seagull. That's the Falcon 9 that's over on pad 40 right now. I was going to point at the Crew-1 booster. If only I knew who was in charge of pointing at the Crew-1 booster. Somebody text this guy and tell him he needs to point.
Why are we focused on a Falcon 9 on pad 40 though?
But no, we're not anymore.
Well, we were when I started the question.
Now that I fixed it, we're on the Crew-1 booster. If you want to go back to pad 40, here, visual aids. Let me click on this and voila, pad 40 again. I don't know, Chris, why would we point a camera at pad 40? That's a great question.
Well, we might be pointing it at pad 40 right now because they are in their static fire window, getting ready to static fire the Falcon 9. It's an 8-hour window that opened, Thomas, a couple hours ago?
Yeah, we think it opened at 1 o'clock. So again, they have these static fire windows are like really long and fluid. They're not kind of bound by physics like launch windows are, but we're expecting SpaceX to make another attempt at a static fire. They tried it the other night at like 1 in the morning, and it looked like we saw that abort vent that usually happens when they have an abort during a countdown. So they're trying again. That's probably why they delayed Starlink 24 hours. So at some point today, they're gonna have to do a static fire attempt. We're keeping an eye on that to see when that happens. And again, that's for the Starlink mission launching tomorrow. The first time a Falcon 9 booster will launch for a 7th time, so very exciting.
Excellent. So, y'all, we're going to have a really cool show here today. A lot of stuff to talk about. This is going to be one of our fast and loose NSF lives. We don't have a script to read off or anything like that. We have some things we want to show you. We have some topics we want to discuss. We are, well, I mean, unless you're watching the VOD right now, if it's currently 3:06 Eastern time on November 21st, that's when this is airing live. If you have a question for us, tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight. It goes into some fancy software that we have over on this end, and then we can bring those up and display them on the screen. If you ask a question that's relevant to what we're talking about, so we're talking about Electron, and you ask a question about Electron, likely we'll bring it up. If you're asking about Commercial Crew when we're talking about Electron, we may put that in the queue and save it till we're talking about Commercial Crew. But the purpose of this show is to answer questions. That's why we do it live. So if you have a question for us, please tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight. That is the secret to getting your question into our software queue. The software looks for at NASASpaceflight is literally what it does. Also, things like super chats that come in. We're able to do all this coverage that we do because of y'all's support. If you do a super chat, if you do a channel membership, that comes into our nifty queue here as well. And we shout those out over the course of the show as we do, because we would not be able to do these shows without y'all. But that is my spiel on the intro. Thomas and Chris, where do y'all want to start today? I'll leave it up to y'all.
I think we start at the beginning of the week with the Crew-1 mission. What do you say, Chris?
I think that's a good idea. I think one thing we need to clarify, though, because of what we chose to name this one, no, the Starship 15-kilometer hop is not imminent, as in, like, that's why we're
Not like
live.
today. Like
Yeah. Soon, TM.
When I started seeing people say, wait, how imminent? I was like, word choice. Yes, realizing how that sounds. No, what we mean by that is it's imminent, as in like it's anticipated within the next several days, right, Thomas?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, but let's our apologies on that wording on that.
What should we call it? I mean, how could we change
upcoming?
that?
Starship 15 upcoming. Yeah.
Upcoming.
Soon, TM.
Soon, TM. All right, so upcoming
Soon,
works
TM,
there.
Yes. Sorry
Right,
about that, everyone.
If you refresh, it should now say Starship 15-kilometer hop upcoming. There we go. Upcoming.
Yes,
right.
I see the change too. Yes.
Fixed. See? It's actually live. I told you. It's like we're doing this live. All right. So
there we have it.
To talk about, what was the first thing there? Crew-1?
Yes, Crew-1.
Yeah, Crew-1,
yes,
Sunday night.
Let's talk about Crew-1 because it was absolutely gorgeous. And I know we have our video stream of it there for us, DOS. But yes,
yep.
The Crew-1 mission was absolutely amazing. They lifted off right on time in their single-second launch window. Actually overcoming a hatch issue that was really interesting. They had a piece of debris inside of the hatch that was preventing a good seal and a good leak check of the capsule, and they were able to work that, from what it sounded like, right, Thomas, it came pretty close to the wire there. I remember like a call out about 4 minutes left, and then 5 minutes later they were still working the issue, but they hadn't scrubbed,
right.
So not sure.
They said
exactly
something along the lines of they had like 10 minutes to fix the problem, and I think it took all 10 minutes. It was very close, but they squeaked it out.
Yes, because I know there were a lot of relieved people on the causeway where I was, along with one of our photographers, Brady. But it was absolutely gorgeous because in one of those moments where, you know, they say Florida weather, never give up on it, never discount it, no matter what it is. And we normally tend to say that when the odds look really, really bad, right? Like 70, 80% no go. But that launch weather was literally a flip the coin, 50-50 shot, which is somewhat more infuriating in terms of planning.
Right.
And anticipation, but it ended up being an absolutely crystal clear night at the Space Center. I mean, in fact, so much so that the shot I didn't think we were actually going to be able to get, given the weather forecast and all the cloud cover that was anticipated, was the entry burn so far downrange. It was just unreal. But this is a great shot from Brady here on screen of a self-portrait that he did of the Falcon 9 lifting off. And I have to give a shout out to Jamie Groh, because she said what we were all thinking, that silhouette of Brady taking the photo of Falcon 9 launching kind of looks like a penguin. And, and yes, it does. But that is in fact Brady holding a camera and a photograph of Brady taking a photograph of the Falcon 9, which I think is really, really cool.
I was showing that's Brady's elbow in the frame over there.
Yes,
that is Brady's. Not a wing. Somebody doing the chicken dance on the causeway or something.
Yeah, I know that because obviously I wasn't on base for this mission, but I was in Titusville, and the whole day I was just thinking that 50-50 weather shot is just not good enough for me to be confident in it going. And so the whole time I was like kind of expecting it, being a pessimist, expecting it to get scrubbed for whatever reason. And then when that hatch issue came up, I was like, oh, there it is. They're not, they're going to take too long to fix it, and that's going to be the scrub. That'll be that. And then they cleared. And once they cleared that, I think I got optimistic again.
Oh man, it's so true, because what we always say is, oh, if the rocket's ready, the weather will get you, right?
Yeah.
But I know what you mean, Thomas, because that was really my thought, 50-50. I just didn't know how to commit, or what to think, or be real optimistic about those weather chances. But give me a 60% and 70% no-go forecast, and I'm very much like, oh, we just wait. That 30% materializes. Figure it out. Yeah.
I'm going to post these in chat as well. These tweets that I'm bringing up here from the fantastic remote cameras and
we had so
photographer
many cool
cameras.
photos out of this launch.
Yeah, we really did. And
there's that one from Brady, the first one there, and I'll post them up as I display them on the screen. I'm going to try to put a link in chat so y'all can click on them and like or retweet, or if you haven't seen them yourself, I will try to do that.
And what's an interesting thing about a lot of these photographs, especially from our team, and I know other members of the photography club out there, geez, I wanted to say squad, and then my brain short-circuited there because I didn't want to say that. For all of the photographers out there, there's the sentence I was trying to say. We initially set up thinking that launch was going to be just over 24 hours away, and then just after we got all set up came the delay, and NASA didn't take us back out to do any camera reset or anything like that. So all of the hand warmers that normally protect against dew and moisture weren't functioning on a lot of the cameras unless you had automatic or electric heaters that were applied to timing. So that's what got a lot of people, and why there's a lot of dew in a lot of the photographs. But this one from but this one from Nathan is not so much dew, but the humidity in the atmosphere. So that's not, this is how humid it was. And I know people are like, what? It's November. It's supposed to be snowing and cold.
Florida
abstains from winter. So no, this was literally, there was so much humidity and moisture in the atmosphere. I know he was telling me that if he had bumped that light level up anymore, it would have blown it out. And that's something you have to face sometimes. It's not what's on your lens, but it's also just the sheer amount of moisture in the atmosphere down here. So, yeah.
So once they fixed that hatch issue, the launch went off perfectly. It was a gorgeous launch. Stage 1 landed on just read the instructions, right? Wait.
Yes, just read the instructions.
I was checking my drone ship really quick because, of course, it still have these out on the Starlink mission. Yes. And after launch, though, shortly after, Dragon separates from the upper stage, there was actually another technical issue. Actually, two post-launch small technical issues that came up. Let's talk about those.
Yeah. So the biggest one is the thruster quad issue. So shortly after they got on orbit, the temperature readings inside of the fuel lines of the thruster quads, of the 4 thruster quads that they have, started trending downward to a low temperature that basically was getting toward that point of not being acceptable, but crucially never dropped below acceptable limits there. And this was one of those issues that kind of comes up sometimes in new vehicles where, it seems really dramatic in the moment that it's happening, but then when the teams actually have a chance to go and really look, turns out to really be nothing. And this happened to be one of those where it just happened to be that the preset limit for when the system would trip if the temperature started to drop was just set too conservatively high. And what they realized with Dragon launching at this particular time, shortly after sunset, in winter months where it's going to be in darkness for a lot longer periods of time in the initial moments after it arrives on orbit, it was just something they figured out of, oh, we set the temperature too high, right? It's like getting in your car and you forget to turn the air conditioning on, but you turn the fan up, right, to high, and can seem like, oh my gosh, my air conditioner is not working. This is going to cost me hundreds of dollars. What am I going to do? Oh, I forgot to turn the air conditioning on. And that's a really oversimplified way of thinking about it, but it's a good way to think about it in this regard, because and a lot of the things that that we were listening to as a team when this was unfolding was, what do the voices of mission control sound like, right? Does SpaceX seem really concerned about this or not? And when they were kind of like, yeah, we're going to go away and figure it out, like, you guys are good to keep doing what you're doing. When they start telling the crew you're good to keep doing what you're doing, we're not in an emergency, oh my gosh, what's going to happen situation, which is why there wasn't a lot of panic or undue concern after they got in orbit.
And Chris, I just realized why this was the picture. I think we were illustrating what the thruster quads actually are, right?
Yes, thank you.
Is that why this was the picture?
This is why this is a picture. So you can blow this up full screen, DOS, if you want, because
I don't know, can I?
Because here's the thing, it's really freaking difficult to get photographs of the thruster quads because of where they are. So they are the little gray blobs on the capsule by the Super Draco exhaust ports.
Just above the Super Draco with the NASA logo, right?
Yes.
Is that them right there?
Yes. Yeah. So
nice.
So these are the ones we're talking about, and there are 4 of them, and the flight rules state that 2 of them have to be operational, or 3. How many, Thomas? Was it 2 or 3?
They need 3.
3, right?
Well, now I'm second guessing myself. I thought it was 3.
Yeah.
I think they're allowed to have 1 down and ignore that, but after that.
Yeah, and this was becoming the concern immediately after liftoff, that they weren't going to be able to recover them because it was temperatures on like 3 of the. That's where I'm getting.
I know 3 of the 4
temperatures on 3
down.
Of the 4,
yeah.
right? Were the ones that got tripped offline by that conservative estimate. But yes, it was incredibly difficult to find where these things were through pictures, because you can't really see them from the ground, we discovered when I was going through all of our pre-launch pad photography. So this is one taken from the International Space Station as one of the Dragons came into dock. So yeah.
Good deal.
And again, this is a crewed mission, so all of these small issues that maybe on a cargo mission we would have never even heard of, just because they would have fixed it and that would have been that. On crew missions, these things kind of get amplified, right? Because of course the stakes are higher, and there's a lot more sort of, obviously, they're continuous live coverage from launch till docking, and there's a lot more kind of documentation that kind of comes out about these crewed missions. So these are things that kind of happen on most spaceflight missions. There will be small things that come up that the teams have to work through, and this is kind of one of those things. This isn't a sign of like some systematic problem with the Dragon fleet or anything like that. This is just an in-flight problem that they were able to resolve and carry on with the mission. Overall, just a very successful trip to the ISS, and now the ISS is up to 7 crew members, which is not. When was the last time we had 7 people on ISS, Chris?
It would have been during one of the Soyuz direct handovers,
right,
when the crew was up to 6 crew members. So that was probably so that would have been the last time that we had more than 7 people, or at least 7
it's been a
on
while.
Board. Yes, but first time we've had a permanent crew of 7, which is really exciting. Yes, and was really cool to see them arrive. Of course, Dragon did an automated docking to the space station. Mike and Victor did not have to take over control at all from the spacecraft, executed it perfectly. The only little thing that did crop up in the docking was Mike and Victor asking for an increase of time at that 30-meter hold point, which was the final hold point prior to pushing into docking. And that was just because where they happened to be in because of orbital mechanics when they got to that point. The sun was setting very rapidly, and the shadows that were being cast by other modules and solar arrays of the station across that docking port were blocking Mike and Victor's visual views of the docking target. Dragon could see it just fine. Dragon could have executed the approach and docking just fine, but because for crew missions like this, there's always that built-in ability for the crew to take over at whenever they need to in the sequence. They wanted to be able to make sure they were seeing that docking port. So we ended up docking, I think it was 2.5 minutes past the predicted time. It was, I mean, basically on time. And of note, before they held for extra time at that 30-meter hold point, they were actually running ahead of the schedule by several minutes, and ended up being like 2.5 minutes behind the pre-published. But was really interesting to watch that docking unfold, and just very, very smooth of how it all went, even smoother than when you go back and compare it to Demo 2, which is really cool that you can see some of those lessons being implemented already. Yeah, and then of course, I think a lot of our watchers we'd be remiss if we didn't say maybe technically there are 8 crew members on board the International Space Station because, Baby Yoda, but, but I love that they chose Baby Yoda. I don't know about you guys, but I thought that was a wonderful, wonderful touch. And just kind of seemed right.
I don't think I have a picture of that. I don't think we have a picture of that one. Or I'd bring up Baby Yoda, but I don't have that picture handy.
Yeah.
So now that Dragon Resilience, which is of course the name of the Crew-1 capsule, is docked to the ISS, you have 7 crew members on board, 4 from Dragon, 3 from a Soyuz spacecraft. How these crew members will stay on for 6 months, and because of how we arrange our visiting vehicle schedule, Dragon Resilience will stay docked to the station for all those 6 months and stay until those 4 same crew members are ready to come home. So during Resilience's stay, that means that there's going to be another Dragon that's actually going to visit the station, right?
There is indeed, and it will be launching in just a couple of weeks here on December 2nd. And this will be the same basic design of a Dragon version 2, but only in its cargo only variant. So the biggest change actually, and this looks really weird, it doesn't have the Super Dracos on the side of it, but it still has those bump outs on the side, which look really cool. But yes, there will be another Dragon that comes up, CRS-21, December, staying through the start of the new year. And then Dragon, and then Crew-1 and Crew-2 will overlap with one another for a couple of weeks. And then more cargo Dragons will be coming up as Crew-2 is there, and then Crew-2 and Crew-3 will overlap again. They've got, I think they said seven Dragon missions over the course of the next year or something that are on tap between cargo, crew, and that new one that they keep talking about from Axiom, and also the pending Tom Cruise one. Yeah, it's busy, and man, it's going to be interesting to see how quickly they can accelerate into those private missions with Dragon as well.
I mean, I just remember we had in-flight abort test was this year, which I have to keep reminding myself that was literally this year.
Yeah.
And we've gone from not having done the in-flight abort test to we are into operational Crew Dragon missions. So, and that was all this year. So, I mean, I would not doubt them accelerating that pretty quickly.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, it really does seem, and it is hard to remember at some points, that in-flight abort was like the second week of January.
Right.
Or the third week of January, whatever it was. But it was, wow. Yeah, that was this year.
So do we have some questions and some super chats we can go through now, maybe?
We do, actually. I'll grab a couple super chats real quick, and then we also have some of the port return stuff on Crew-1 as well. Moldy Space Industries sneaking through, saying the perfect ending to my week. Great launch this morning. Moldy Space Industries, thank you so much for your long time support. So, yeah, just put it right down there for you so you can see it. Thank you so much for the $15 there. And then Rough Rider Show, another regular super chatter over there, saying double header in NSF. How long will CRS-21 Dragon stay up at the ISS? So CRS-21 Dragon, how long will that stay at the ISS?
Right, about a month, right?
Yep, about a month. Yeah, the cargo missions aren't changing in that regard, mainly because there's no real need to keep them there longer. What comes up in them usually gets taken out very, very quickly for the time-sensitive experiments, and then it actually really behooves them to come home as quickly as possible because some of those experiments are up-down, and there are also other biomedical experiments that are waiting to come down as well. So yeah, the cargo vehicles will still stay for about a month, whereas the crew variants will stay for 6.
Good deal.
There
Good
you go.
question there, Rough Riders. Thank you for that one. And then also Taylor Van Camp, $2 saying, whatever happened to Dragon XL? Got any Dragon XL info
Dragon
lately?
XL, it's still coming. So that is
Yeah.
the version of the Dragon spacecraft, which I don't know if we can really call. I know it's called Dragon, but it has very little in common. It might have the same solar panels. It'll have Draco thrusters, but that might be about it, and the same docking port. But that's the version. That's the cargo version that SpaceX is going to launch to Lunar Gateway to resupply the Lunar Gateway for NASA's Artemis program, and that first launch is not for a couple years. I forget what year it's supposed to start, but it'll be just in advance of the Artemis 3 landing, and that'll be launching on a Falcon Heavy to Lunar Gateway. So that's still in the works, but that's a couple years down the line. So
And
still
that-
in
and that-
like development. Yeah.
And that even assumes that the gateway becomes necessary, or
Right.
it remains necessary for the lunar lander elements of the Artemis program. A lot of which remains to be seen, but yeah.
And
I know. Yeah, go ahead.
oh no, I just got one last one there from Cindy K.
Sure.
Cindy K said, $15, by the way. How many people can they put on the ISS at once? At some point, Boeing may get their man test as well. So, do we know what's the maximum the ISS has ever hosted? With a caveat that there was another large spacecraft with a lot of living room on it attached to it at the time.
So the ISS was basically built to accommodate a crew of 13 for brief periods of time, and that was to accommodate a crew of 6, a normal crew of 6, and a potential shuttle crew of 7, all on board the Outpost at the same time. The ISS can't do more than that for prolonged periods of time because of the carbon dioxide, all the life support systems and the recycling systems, and all of those things are not built to handle that long term. That being said, what we will see here is a maximum crew. So when the U.S. crew missions overlap with one another, there will be 8 people on the U.S. side of the station and 3 on the Russian side of the station. So you'll get back up to 11 in that regard for normal operations. Now, so if Boeing comes up and does, when Boeing comes up and does their crew flight tests with Starliner, that's not a problem for the station to handle, the 3 extra people. Of course, how long in duration the crew flight test of Starliner is going to be is probably a huge point of discussion right now because it was originally expanded to 6 months in order to bridge the gap between losing the seats on the Russian Soyuz and commencement of commercial crew operations, but that is now obviously not a factor for that. So I think we'll also see a bit of a discussion on what that duration for the crew flight test of Starliner will end up being.
Yep, absolutely. And we've got, let's see here. Those are all the super chats. Let me see if I can grab some questions. Not really a question. This is more of a comment, apparently. Just Jeb says, long-haired Chris is back.
Yes, this is a reference to the very controversial decision to pull my hair back for a stream earlier in the week, and yes, so made sure to not do that again.
We appreciate you, Just Jeb. Let's see here. This is from Miko Correcto, and Miko asked, with all the protocols the ramp crew are following, wouldn't you think a gasket wipe of the hatch seal would be on the list? So talking about the FOD problem, I mean, it seems like launching crew is such an important thing that you should not be missing basic blocking and tackling like a FOD check. Why did they miss that?
Well, so wiping down the hatch seal is part of the procedure, and the way they test that is how they found that it was not completely clear during the launch, and they do that leak check. So they close the hatch, and then they adjust the pressure to make sure that the pressure is holding and staying where it's supposed to be. And when it wasn't, then they knew that the hatch closure didn't go properly. They opened it back up. They did another inspection. They found some FOD. They wiped it down again, and that cleared it out. So they do test those things, and that's how they found the problem in the first place.
That's the purpose of the whole
They
leak
didn't
check
find, yeah, they didn't like
steps.
find that they had, not done that completely by accident. That was part of their testing.
Gotcha. Chris, does that make sense to you?
Oh,
I
yes,
mean,
it does. Yes. Yep.
Gotcha. All right. So Miko Correcto, there you go on that one. I wonder if they won't.
I mean, I think the only thing I'd add to that, right, is when with seals, and one of the reasons they do leak checks like this is, how many of us have, been sealing something, put everything in correctly, and then you go to like screw on the cap to make that final seal, and the seal somehow comes up and doesn't seal correctly, and you have to redo it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I do that all the time, but I'm not launching Crew to the space station, right?
well, right, but the generalized point being, right, you can look at something and you can examine it, right, and just the way it catches on the day or something that you don't find in that light, right? That's why we have all these backups in place, like the.
That's why they do all the
seals.
testing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me grab a couple more here, and let's see. So here's another one. Kenji Okura asks, out of curiosity, were there any prop temp issues during DM1 in March 2019? Well, saw somebody on Twitter talk about that and was confused. So I guess that sort of says we did DM1. Why didn't they catch this during DM1? Why didn't they catch this during DM2? Why are they still having an issue with this? Did it change? Did it just act differently? What do we have any guesses on what happened there?
From everything I've seen, and Thomas, please jump in if you've seen something different. This wasn't something that was wrong. This wasn't an issue within the system. And I think it's important to note too that the temperatures that they were hitting that were causing the systems to go offline were the off-scale low temperatures. Right?
They were safe. They were still well within the safety margin. It was just saying, "Hey, look out!" Right?
Exactly. And what they discovered was that those limits had been set too conservatively. Right. Now, here's a couple of different things to remember, because this comes down to the thermal properties of the vehicle and the temperatures within the propellant system, right? The previous two Dragon missions, Demo 1 launched in the middle of the night, and within 20 to 30 minutes was in daylight, right? Demo 2 launched in daylight, right, and was passing out at Crew-1 launched barely after sundown in winter, headed toward the winter solstice, north into further darkness, and then had to, right. So all those different, that has different thermal reactions as you work that down the timeline. Right.
Gotcha.
So it's not entirely surprising to me that you would find an issue launching so quickly after sunset, where you were in darkness for the first part of your mission. And that's what we were really talking about, is like, oh, it's one of those things that you don't find that issue until you fly. Right. And if you go back in history too, and look at some of the earlier reports from previous first flights of spacecraft, right, you find these little things as they continue to hone in on the system and realize what they were too conservative with, that they can relax. So normal part of operational flight, as it were.
Right, and that comes down to like you were saying, an experience sort of thing. The more crew spacecraft that SpaceX launches, the more they'll run into things like that. I'm sure the space shuttle had the same sorts of things when they launched it, and they learned something new, and they launched it and they learned something new. Just something as simple as, oh, the spacecraft stayed in shadow for longer during the launch, and so now we got this new reading that's slightly off on the temperature, but not indicating a massive issue. Clearly, like you were saying, Chris, just to sort of wrap this conversation up, mission control was not pulling out their hair. They're saying, oh, go ahead, take your spacesuits off, go forward. It wasn't like there's a leak in the spacecraft, something's wrong. It was all little things that were not massive issues that really affected the mission, other than, but now we've learned something, and next time we know that this is how it may go when we launch in this time, in this shadow, et cetera, right?
Exactly.
Gotcha. All right. And I'm watching time because we have a lot of talking about Starship. Again, y'all, there is no Starship launch today. I mean, maybe there's not. Who knows, Elon? But we tried.
SpaceX can always offer a surprise, but we're not expecting one today.
Elon can surprise you sometimes. But we tried to edit the stream title the best we could. We're talking about the upcoming Starship SN8 hop that is upcoming. It's not happening today. We're not trying to trick people into, oh yeah, stay tuned and maybe. No, that's not what's going on. I do see in chat people getting a little bit confused about that, but we've edited the title. We talked about it at the beginning. If you're just joining us, we're not expecting an SN8 hop today. That's not what we're doing. All right, just trying to be really clear there. I don't want anybody to think we're trying to trick them into watching our stream. Let's see. Here's a good question. A couple more on Crew-1, and then we'll go on. When is Crew-2 launching? So do we have Crew-2 on the manifest, and when would we expect that?
So a bit of a yes and a no on that one. NASA has released their internal readiness date, where they want the vehicle and the crew ready by the 30th of March, 2021 for liftoff. But that is not a target date. That is the readiness date. So it can that's really the absolute no earlier than, but I wouldn't personally start booking flights for a variety of reasons. But just wouldn't put that on the calendar just yet. They're going to have to also work out how that's going to work with the Soyuz MS-17 and 18 handover, which is scheduled for mid-April as well. So they're going to have to work that out with the Russians to make sure we're not overstressing and overtaxing the crew.
Gotcha. And that sort of goes right into another question from a super chat. Brad asking, will Starliner and Dragon dock to ISS at the same time? So could we ever expect a Starliner and a Dragon to be visiting the station simultaneously?
Indeed, and that is the plan. So what we believe the current plan is, so right now the current plan, right, is that the two Dragons will do the handover between Crew-1 and Crew-2. Two Dragons will also do the handover between Crew-2 and Crew-3 in 2021. And then if everything goes to plan on Starliner's test sequences on the reflight of orbital flight test and crew flight test, then that would put Boeing in position to do a Dragon Starliner handover between the Crew-3 and whatever the Starliner mission designations are going to be called. We have been told it is not uniform across the commercial crew providers, so the SpaceX missions will be called one thing and the Starliner missions will be called something else.
Gotcha. And I realized I'm going to try to put something other than talking heads up on the screen here while we're talking. So let's hop over to something.
What? How dare you? I kept my hair down for this. No.
Let's go to something Crew-1 related while we talk about Crew-1.
Any excuse to bring up fleet cam, right, Dos?
You got me, Thomas. Guilty as charged. That is actually the Crew-1 booster at Port Canaveral. That's a live feed coming from the NASASpaceflight sleep cam, brought to you by Rusty's. Anyways, let's grab a couple more Crew-1 questions because I didn't like the talking heads. Too much talking heads there. Let's see. Just grabbing another one about this. Okay, so here's a good one. Rebels Landing asked, what about the first stage booster trip home? We saw this thing coming into port, and it was wacky coming into port, wasn't it?
You know, we saw it land
least.
via the official stream, and we were rebroadcasting it on ours as well. We saw it landed. It looked pretty normal, relatively close to the center of the drone ship. Didn't look particularly rough or anything. And then myself and Julia and Stephen Marr, that NSF crew down at Port Canaveral, see it out on the horizon, and it's got, you know, Leaning Tower of Pisa status. So something happened while they were out at sea, and the booster was, once we got closer, we saw it was all the way near the edge of the drone ship. I know we have some photos that Das can bring up if he wants to, you know, not show fleet cam for a second. But
I was using fleet cam while I was getting ready to show those. Trust me.
Okay, so we saw the booster had like moved across it. There you go. That's one of Juliet's photos, all the way on the side of Just Read the Instructions, and tilted significantly. So probably some rough seas or something to that extent. Causing some trouble. Of course, Octograbber, the robot, the on deck of Just Read the Instruction, was the hero, keeping the booster firmly secured so that they could bring it back. And Elon did say on Twitter that, yeah, they'll have to switch out a couple parts, but other than that, booster will be a-okay to fly again going forward. So it was dramatic to see and somewhat entertaining, but not a sign of any sort of major issues. The booster will be able to fly again, most likely on the Crew-2 mission, right, Chris? They're going to use this booster for their next SpaceX Crew mission.
Indeed, yeah, that's the current plan. In fact, NASA when they specifically approved the reuse plan, made a point of saying that the Crew-1 booster would be the one they want for Crew-2. And we even saw NASA agree to delay the launch, in part because of booster recovery weather. Large part of that was the onshore winds for abort conditions, which both SpaceX and NASA would have to have moved it for anyway. But it was very noteworthy that NASA's release included the very specific reference to booster recovery. Basically, NASA saying, it's our booster for Crew-2, we want it back. But also,
go ahead.
Sorry, just one more thing on that note. But of note, they also had an insurance backup plan. The booster that launched the Sentinel-6A mission this morning was the backup booster for Crew-2 in case they lost the Crew-1 booster for whatever reason.
I was rushing there. We were talking about Octograbber, so I was trying to bring up this tweet.
Yes.
It's a time lapse from Fleet Cam, and for one of the first times, you can actually see the automated Octograbber struts. You see those robotic things that are sort of leaning down. Octograbber is that robot that actually drives under the Falcon 9, and those struts actually extend up and they connect to hard points on Falcon 9 itself. In fact, I can circle them real quick. This right here, that is what Octograbber actually attaches to. So those struts sort of lean, they raise up and then they extend and it clamps on to the hard points right there also where the legs connect. And that is probably what got this booster home, right?
That's a lot of what we think, right, Thomas?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen, and if you've seen like one of the video that SpaceX released, how not to land an orbital class booster, right?
Yep.
There was the one mission, the TICOM 8, I think, TICOM 8 mission where a booster came in super sideways, and I think it was like some radar issue during landing. This was way a while ago when they were still kind of learning how to do Falcon 9 landings. It landed successfully, but it did not land particularly straight and was kind of dancing around the deck in the seas because of it kind of landed off center. And so that's kind of what drove them to introduce Octograbber to help hold these boosters down. So in rougher seas, or if the landing doesn't go perfectly, they can make sure the booster stays secure. And Octograbber, I think whatever it cost SpaceX to develop Octograbber, they have earned back on the Crew-1 mission because that saved that booster 100%.
I know Chris B had a tweet with that video in it where the booster was literally just sliding all over the deck. If only he would tweet less, though. I'm trying to find it. so many tweets. Well, I guess this one came up real quick. We could show this one.
That was a good one.
It was funny because me and Julia were down there, and this was by the time they had switched to Fleet Cam, but I didn't see this live. I just heard people talking about protractors and tilt indicators. I'm like, I don't know what they're showing on screen. I'm just pointing cameras. And,
that's what we were doing, Thomas. Yes.
Literally, I think we came up with about 5 degrees, roughly.
It was roughly 5, like 5.5. I think is what sticks in my head for the final final measurement we got of it. Yeah.
Well, welcome to NASA Spaceflight live streams, y'all. That's sort of how we roll. I'm gonna keep looking for that other one, but we are sort of getting to the end of Crew-1, the Crew-1 discussion, because we got a lot more to talk about. I mean,
we have a lot to talk about. We're like halfway through the show, and we've been babbling on about Crew-1.
About Crew-1, super important. But between Rocket Lab and
we got
Starship,
so much cool stuff this week.
Yeah, should we go on to Rocket Lab now?
I think that's a great. Although, actually, hold on. Can we briefly just review the launch that happened this morning? I know we had a whole launch stream about it, and we're on talking about SpaceX because I know there's some new photos that we should share as soon as we possibly can.
Yes.
I know Das knows what I'm talking about, right?
Yep. So this is, let's see
So
here.
just really briefly, so we talked about, Chris mentioned Sentinel-6A, another brand new booster, would have been the backup booster for Crew-1, launched this morning from Vandenberg, launching the Sentinel-6A satellite for NASA and the ESA and NOAA and I think the French Space Agency, right? There were like 4 agencies involved in this mission. But finally another launch from Vandenberg, and it was a gorgeous launch this morning, completely successful. The satellite is in its orbit. Falcon 9 came back and landed on landing zone 4 at Vandenberg, right next to the launch site. And an end of a drought for Vandenberg Air Force Base, first launch from there in over a year.
Yep, and this is Jack Byers' video.
Yes.
He was out there running another new remote, which of course we were able to make happen because of y'all's support. We have a West Coast Jack remote encoder now, so we can get video from Jack in the field. And got the launch. This was about 8-9 miles away from a Lompoc local area called Harris Grade Road, but this was live on the stream this morning. Massive thanks to Jack for rolling out and bringing this up. And then I know this is the one we were looking for here, right? Let me grab that new one, the
Yes,
latest
because
tweet.
the remote camera photos are starting to come out, and Michael Baylor, who was there for NASA Spaceflight, got an incredible landing shot. Look at that.
It looks tilt shifted. It looks like a toy. You know the tilt shift thing where it looks like a model
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something
yeah.
like that? I'll put this tweet in chat so y'all can bring it up directly. But there is a link to the chat directly. And if you look at it, it almost looks like a little wee baby toy Falcon 9 landing on the launch pad.
That looks so cool.
It really does.
Yeah. Ah.
Like they've hidden the toothpick up the flame, right, to get it to stick, like on the little model. Yes.
There's like those lamps you can make, right? Where you take a rocket model, like a 1 to whatever, 1 to
Yeah.
64 scale model or whatever, and then you put cotton balls and LEDs on the bottom, and there's a little wire holding the rocket up.
Yeah.
Not a bad
Yeah.
idea.
Like that. Yeah. I mean, that's how it works in the real world, right?
You know what I should do? I should probably retweet this. I brought it up for this, but I should probably just click retweet. There, live on the stream, done. And we had some other photos and stuff about Sentinel 6A as well. Here is Jack. Again, I don't feel bad about it loading on the screen, y'all. I'm literally just putting the link into Twitter. But this is liftoff from Jack out there, doing 2 things at once, running a live stream camera and also taking some still photos. That is, you see, Thomas, you pointed out the strong back there is getting a little toasty, isn't it?
Yeah. That's okay though, because the launch cadence out in Vandenberg isn't quite as fast as over here on the East Coast, so they'll have plenty of time to make any repairs they need to on the transporter erector. They'll be good to go.
Yep, got a fantastic shot in flight there. The
Yeah.
detail in the flame is fantastic as well. And then I think he's got there's the landing one. There's the landing one as
Nice.
well. So we'll link these up as well. I'm just trying to put all these links over here into chat so y'all can see it. And I think I got one last one and then we'll go on. It's Michael's launch photos. I don't think I've brought Michael's launch photos up yet. So
Yes.
these are from Michael over at the press site. We will work on getting a live stream camera here at some point as well. It's just logistics with modems and data, but that is a fantastic view. It's right from across the valley there at the Air Force Base, and that was Michael's view for some still photos. There's the landing too. Oh, that's cool. Those over there too.
You want to say too, like, what a gorgeous and crystal clear display Falcon 9 gave the residents of Southern California today. Been a really long time since there'd been a launch period out of Vandenberg for a while, and I mean the fact that they happened to nail it at just the right time to not have any fog or anything. Gorgeous. Glad everyone got to see it, because we've definitely been spoiled here in Florida with not having a drop in our launch cadence, but an increase in ours. So it was really good to see the people in California and our colleagues in California get this morning.
Excellent. So that was Sentinel 6A. Again, to wrap that up, a successful launch from Vandenberg, breaking the dry spell. Not a lot of launches happening at Vandenberg, but SpaceX with a fantastic RTLS. It's the first RTLS we've seen in a while as well. Return to the launch site, actually. At Vandenberg, it's almost the launch site. It's like 100 meters away or something.
Yeah, it's like literally the launch site.
It's 400. It's 430 meters, 1,410 feet between the launch mount and the landing pad. Yeah.
So we should see some remotes that actually have the launch and the landing in the same frame. It's you can't do this at the cave. Well, I guess you could do it in the cave, but here
from the right angle, but they're farther away. Yeah.
Yeah, at Vandenberg, you can set up a remote camera, one of those automatic triggered cameras, such that the launch pad's right here and the landing pad's just past the launch pad, and it looks like it's all in one frame just because of the way they're set up.
Can't wait to see. I know more remote photos are going to come out from both NSF people and others. Can't wait to see what they got, because it was a gorgeous day.
Yep. So on to our next topic here, Rocket Lab return to sender.
Absolutely. So this was
sort of a deal.
This was a big deal, and I try to temper like my excitement about it, because it wasn't the end goal yet. It's a step. It's a huge step, and according to Peter Beck, it was the hardest step, and it sounds like it went very well. So Rocket Lab looking to turn Electron into this reusable launcher. They eventually want to bring the stage back and kind of recover it in midair as it's descending under a parachute. This was a splashdown test. You can see it right next to the recovery ship. It looks to be in great shape. Obviously, the teams are going to have a lot of data to look through and inspections, but overall, it looks like a great flight. Of course, the primary mission also is completely successful, delivered 30 payloads to orbit. And then the first stage successfully soft splashed down in the water. The next step after this will be, and I don't know if there's a timeline for like which mission they're going to try this for. In the future, while it's descending on the parachute, instead of letting it hit the water, they're going to catch it with a helicopter, which they've demonstrated before. They did sort of helicopter drop tests to test that out. And Peter Beck has actually said that he's very confident that they've got that down. They think that might be the easy part. The harder part is getting the stage to descend through reentry in one piece and then deploying the parachutes properly. Here is the video that Rocket put out. This is an awesome video. I rewatch this all the time just because of how cool it is. They had a test article that they dropped from one helicopter, and then the other one went and grabs it as if it's a descending rocket stage, and it was super cool. But a big step forward in the return to sender. Always love the mission names. Mission. A big step towards making Electron reusable.
And here,
just what is that going to be like the first time we see video? I mean, I hope they could get it to us live on the stream, but I mean, that far remote in the Pacific is going to be challenging.
Mm-hmm.
But like, can you just imagine the video when they do that for the first time and it's not a mass simulator?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
this whole idea is crazy. Literally putting the parachute on the first stage and then catching the first stage with a helicopter. Now they're able to do this. You could not catch a Falcon 9 with a helicopter. It's way too big.
No, you
right?
cannot. And that's a big difference.
Small enough.
Because when you're talking about rockets the size of Falcon 9, if you want to recover that entire first stage booster, SpaceX actually did try initially parachutes. They were going to use parachutes to splash down in the water and recover it that way. But the first stage is so big and so heavy, parachutes just aren't feasible. But when you're dealing with a small sat launcher like Rocket Lab's Electron rocket, that's completely doable. And in fact, to keep it out of the water, because you don't like your rocket components getting wet, especially with salt water, they can recover them out of midair, which is not a super new thing. They used to do that with film canisters from the first sets of like spy satellites. We would literally send our film from cameras, no digital anything, in little reentry capsules, and you would catch them in midair. So that's actually been done before. It hasn't been done in a while, but it's not completely unheard of, and they have done some successful testing with their Rocket Lab articles. But yeah.
So this whole thing is just so cool. Sorry, I'm looking at the video. It's so cool. So the step here is that they were actually able, let's pop back this way. That is an actual first stage. The video we were just watching was a mass simulator, right? That wasn't a real rocket that had launched. That was like a practice run. Did I get that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, the helicopter video was just a test article to simulate the weight of a thing and have the parachute system on top. This is a real rocket that launched to space, launched a real mission, and they just didn't catch it. They let it splash down in the water, but the parachute seemed to have worked perfectly. So yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Let me see here. There's some other animations and stuff like this. I got to do this. All right. We're on Twitch as well, so we cannot get by without doing this. I'm just going to bring this up really quickly. This is the launch, and I want you to watch right here. Watch right here. Any gamers watching the show right now, when they get to, there's 4, 3, 2, 1. Come on, pop up. Achievement unlocked. If anybody has games they play on Steam, if you don't know about this, there's an application on your computer that'll download games, and you play games through this thing called Steam, right? And Steam has these achievements. When you do things in various video games, it has a little pop-up thing that pops up, and you get an achievement because you've, run 100 miles or complete this mission or whatever, like whatever you're doing in whatever game you're playing, the little thing pops up on the screen. And I about lost it. I was sitting on the couch watching this, and I'm like watching the thing, and I'm like, what, is that a Steam achievement? It just popped up on the screen. That was part of their official webcast. Of course, this whole mission was fantastic because of the charity outreach that they were doing, right, y'all?
100%. Yeah, they're for the Starship Children's Hospital and the PICU unit, the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit. They were raising money every unique person who watched the mission. They were donating $1 for each of those views, and it was across their YouTube and Twitch channels, as well as And then Morgan Bailey, the lead public affairs officer for Rocket Lab, confirmed afterward as well that those were the viewership totals over the entire 24 hours after liftoff. So I haven't seen her give a final number. I might have just personally missed that, but I haven't seen it yet. But of course, anyone who streams on YouTube knows that what you see as the watching now number is not your unique view count,
Right.
and sometimes not even close to your unique view count. So I think 24 hours ago, she said they were at roughly 80,000.
Nice.
And climbing. And then of course, it's worth mentioning too that one of our friends, Tim Dodd, Everyday Astronaut, did a stream of it as well, and donated all of the super chats from it to that same hospital. And I think he got about $6,900 in super chats added to that as well. So
and then he actually covered the YouTube cut, because when you do a super chat, YouTube takes a cut of it. So he calculated the difference, and he, out of his own pocket, covered the difference so that it was the full amount that appeared in super chats, not after taxes and fees, after YouTube fees, basically.
Exactly.
So really cool that he did that.
Exactly. So yeah, and it was a really cool launch. Just to begin with, but just that added touch of the charity was super cool.
Yeah, and that was one reason we did not stream it on the NASA Spaceflight channel.
Right.
We didn't have our own camera there, right? Is one thing. I mean, I volunteer as tribute. If anybody needs a stream from New Zealand, I mean, sign me up, please. But we actually talked about it behind the scenes, and we decided we were not going to do a stream, and we were going to use our own social media to promote that official stream where they were doing the charity thing. But Tim had a fantastic idea to take whatever super chats he got and donate those super chats over to sort of make up from the difference in doing that stream there. So anyways, well on their way towards another reusable rocket, the small sat launcher on Electron here. But what else? Do we have some questions about that maybe? That's a good idea, isn't it? The gnome.
The gnome Chomsky. Yes.
Gnome Chomsky. Let me grab the super chats here really quickly. Kylie Williams said, booster looking a lot straighter than last time we saw it. Yeah, over at Port Canaveral, that Crew-1 booster, they did use the crane to pick it up and fly it over to the dock on a crane-assisted takeoff. Really short suborbital hop there over to the dock. And now it's straight. So thank you for that one, Kylie. Rusty Can says, hi guys, is the nose cone pressurized at all? I am not sure which nose cone we're talking about there.
We're talking about dragon nose cone?
The little flippy nose cone?
I believe the answer is no. There's no reason it should be. It's probably vented similar to how they vent the Falcon 9 fairings, because those aren't pressurized either. They just need that pressure to be equalized, so I highly doubt it.
Yep. So on that one, no, they're not pressurizing that nose cone. Of course, well, I guess still, the nose cone is not technically pressurized because the nose cone hinges out of the way.
Right, yeah.
And then when it docks to the ISS, the little interim area does get pressurized because that's literally where the astronauts crawl through. But the nose cone is still off on the side. I was trying to do a technically correct thing there because that's the best kind of correct, but
yes,
it wouldn't have been technically correct. Here's another one from Kylie Williams saying, excellent stream this morning, talking about Sentinel-6. Tracking was great. Massive props to Jack again, not only for getting the live stream running, but also doing the fantastic track out there. So Kylie, thank you for that one. And then Harry Young says, this looks like Vandenberg LZ statement. 400 meters from launch to landing means Falcon 9 takes 8.5 minutes to get to 17,450 miles per hour on the quarter mile.
Right, yeah.
On the quarter mile.
It's a really high top speed, but the ET's no good. Nobody wants an 8.5 minute quarter mile there, Harry.
That's funny.
All right.
Now, so I don't know. When I was in elementary school and we were trying to waste time,
were you out, have to jog on the track, and you're sort of just just sort of jogging along to take your extra time? Because if you ran as fast as you could, you ended up having to do more laps. It wasn't
walked many a mile in my day, let me tell you.
All right.
Das, before we move on, can we potentially cut over to fleet cam really quick?
We can. Let's see here. You know the guy in charge of that. Where's fleet cam?
I do.
Let's see what we've got. I'll just bring up the fleet cam. Oops, wrong fleet cam. I got too many.
We got some
cams.
people in chat telling us that we should pay attention to pad 40.
Oh, well, here we go. Let me bring that up just one second here. Fleet cam. How did I have fleet cam in here? Like that. And then we got to get rid of that.
Like we mentioned earlier, we know the Starlink mission coming up tomorrow night needs a static fire, and a couple people in chat are saying that they've seen there's some
There it
people
is.
are saying that there's venting and things. Oh,
Whoa!
look at that!
Oh, there it
Whoa!
goes. Look at that.
Nailed it.
That's live, y'all. That's the
There you
static
go.
fire.
4 o'clock on the dot. They usually,
Woohoo!
target the top of the hour for these things. So there you go. So that is
Nice.
Falcon 9 booster 1049.7. The first time a Falcon 9 will launch a 7th mission. Looks like a very good static fire. Obviously, SpaceX will put out their normal static fire complete tweet once they review the data, make sure it was actually good, but looked like a pretty usual static fire from here at pad 40, and that should set up a Starlink launch tomorrow night. So awesome.
All right, I got
I
the
am
screen
remote-
grab of it really quick.
Nice.
Yeah. There you go. I had two fleet cam feeds coming in, the old way and the new way, and at first I brought up the wrong way, and right when I brought up the right way, bada bing, static
Dogs,
fire on
I
the screen.
really thought you were like trolling us and bringing up a video of a previous one. I mean,
No.
that timing was so perfect. I was like, Dots, what are you doing to us?
I saw one message. It was like, "Hey, there's the Falcon 9's venting," and I'm like, "Hey, DOS, we should pay attention." But yeah, there you go.
I have like a color coding system in the sources, and that source was not color coded yet. So I was trying to find the right video source coming in live from FleetLam on this scene, and I got it just in time. Whew.
I'm gonna retweet Chris real quick.
Yeah, I'll go find that too. Jeez. So y'all, if you're wondering what we're talking about, you just saw a little bit of smoke come out from the bottom of this rocket. That is because this is the next Starlink mission on SLC 40 at Cape Canaveral, and this is a live feed from our fleet cam over at Rusty's Seafood and Oyster Bar, and we just saw a static fire. And they needed to do that static fire as part of their launch campaign to get this next launch going with the Starlink satellites. So the fact that we just saw a static fire live on NSF Live means that is that tomorrow? Do we think that's going to go tomorrow now?
Yeah, tomorrow at 9:56, right?
Yes, 2156, 226 UTC. Yes. Hey! Not only is there a time zone difference, we still changed less than a month ago.
Right. Yeah, we got the daylight saving stuff going on. It's
And math on the fly for me never works well. So yes, I 100% counted that on 5 fingers.
On 5 fingers. Oh, so let's see here. Here is that tweet that you just did, Chris, that screen cap from the static fire. I'll post this in the chat as well so y'all can see that too right there. Whoopsh. And over here as well. I can't believe I've got that video up on my control monitor over here because I have the software that allows me to point fleet cam around, and I've got it in the corner of my eye, but I did not know that when I clicked on that the static fire was going to be coming up. Oh no.
well, there we go.
All right, perfect timing. I almost feel like we should end the stream on that. Like, yeah,
Yes, I wish that was so cool.
Mic drop.
you know that famous video of, was it like the BBC guy who's got the rocket in the
Yes!
background?
Yes.
Yeah, and he's like, and we'll see right about now. And he points, and then the rocket
the
goes.
Titan 3 launches, right? Yeah.
Yes, one of the old Titan launches. Man, I mean, and you want to talk about timing. You had one shot at that, and the Titan gives no warning that it is about to launch because
Right,
it is
yeah.
just 2 solids igniting instantly.
Oh, that was fantastic. I don't even know what else we were supposed to talk about now.
Oh,
Anyway,
man.
successful or static fire there that we just saw.
I think we were still talking about Rocket Lab,
Yeah.
ridiculously enough.
Do we have more questions about Rocket Lab before we move on?
Questions. Yeah, let's grab a couple of those real
Yeah.
quick. Valerie Lane, really quickly. NASA Spaceflight, when do you think we'll see the first reused Electron stage?
So they're almost certainly not going to refly this one, right? Because it splashed down in the water. That's not the recovery method they're looking to use. They need to recover them dry to actually refly them. This is once they'll tear this one apart for inspections and things like that, and they'll have a lot of data to work through. If I had to guess, maybe sometime next year they will have the first catch attempt, and if that goes well, they can reuse that stage. And depending on how quickly they get to that, and again, Rocket Lab hasn't given a timeline for when they'll attempt their first catch, but once they have time to turn that stage around, they'll be able to refly a first stage. So maybe like later next year. It depends on how quickly they proceed along their timeline. I'd say within the next 2 years they'll attempt a reflight. To be super conservative, Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, next year's a good. I mean, I would say next year's a good one, not just for the very humorous fact that I'm going to mention now that there's only 40 days left in the year,
Right.
and there's probably only one flight left for them in December. But no, it's worth adding to there, Thomas, that this initial splashdown attempt was originally going to be Flight 17. They were able to
Right.
pull it forward to Flight 16.
Due to the Wallops flight delay, because Wallops
Yes,
flight was supposed to be
exactly.
originally be flight 15, and now they're just waiting for NASA to finish their AFTS certification, so that's now
Yep.
going to be next year, and so that flight got pushed back, and so this flight, which they didn't pull ahead a booster, this
Right.
flight became the 16th flight.
Right, exactly. The booster that had originally been earmarked for the 17th
Yeah.
flight suddenly became the 16th flight of the vehicle, and that's all that happened here. But yeah, they've never, in the course of talking about this, ever given a hint of how many times they'd want it to splash down first, to have a good handle on how is real-time flying matching
Right.
their computer models, right? Because
Right.
you don't want to stick a helicopter out there unless you have a good degree of certainty. But I'd say with the pace that companies move, maybe the first half of the year we'd see them try to grab one out of the air, because it is also worth noting Rocket Lab, they've had a couple hiccups. They had the hiccup this year, but they in the last half of the year have been on about a one every month cadence pace here.
Yeah.
So it's possible we'll get to recovery or trying to grab it in the first half of the year.
Yep. Excellent. So y'all, let me see. Do we know? Did they release a video of the splashdown? Whoa, earthquake in mission control when you kick your camera. Sorry about that.
They didn't. I don't believe they did. I know they were trying to keep the feed as long as they could, but in typical reentry fashion, reentry is not super kind to communication links.
Right.
So they didn't have the live video, and they haven't released anything after the fact. Hopefully they will, because that would be really cool to see. But nothing yet. We'll have to stay tuned. See if Rocket Lab has some imagery to post on later.
Yep.
And I'm sure they will eventually. They're a company
I think they
that's
said they
actually
want
pretty
to.
open
They just
about
gotta
that.
get all the
Yeah.
data and stuff.
Yeah, they tend to be good about that. So let's see. That sort of wraps us up with this. Let me run a couple super chats really quickly here. Pablo Martin, thank you so much. Look, you put the currency conversion in. It's ARS 500, but it says 5 USD. Thank you for that. It makes our lives a lot easier. Thank you. The quality of the stream. Pablo, thank you so much for the support in the super chat there. And then Rusty Can, Rusty Can with 2 curly L's saying, thanks for guessing my question. Thank you, Rusty Can. And then
I keep
Jerwa.
misreading that name as Rusty Cam, and I think we're talking about Fleet
Yes,
Cam at
me
Rusty's.
too.
Rusty Cam.
I keep thinking it's Rusty's, and like they've given themselves a weird nickname, and then I see pounds instead of dollars, and I'm like, okay, now I'm out. Like,
Jeez. And then last but not least, Jerwa with the $5 saying perfect timing. Appreciate you there. Jerwa, perfect timing. Completely on purpose. Let me tell you. It was 100%. 100% on purpose.
All calculated.
We've got 20 something minutes left in the show. We do have one important thing, and then we'll spend the rest of the show talking about
I think
Starship.
that's a good idea,
yeah.
But I wanted really quickly to talk about the Vega launch. So we were live for that Vega launch. We did see we saw a question about the Vega launch in here. So let's talk about Vega really quickly, and I will bring up this video on the Vega launch. It's slightly weird when our overlay is here, and then our overlay is
right.
it's our stream, but then it's our stream. We need like a different overlay for NSF Live or something. But I'm gonna hit play on this. Y'all take it away.
Yeah, sure. So, brief overview. This was the latest flight of Arianespace's Vega launcher, their sort of small, lighter lifter launch vehicle, carrying 2 satellites, one for the French Space Agency and one for a Spanish company, Hisdesat, 2 Earth observation / science satellites. And the flight went relatively normally for almost the entire duration. They got all the way to the 4th stage, the AVM upper stage, and at that point the flight did encounter an issue. Some very preliminary findings sounds like they went to it was some sort of operations error. It wasn't a design problem, but the upper stage was processed incorrectly ahead of launch. There was some propellant line issue. and as a result, the trajectory did degrade, and unfortunately, those two satellites did not reach orbit properly. And this is actually the second failure of the Vega launch vehicle in its past 3 flights. It had a failure last year, returned to flight successfully earlier this year, but now has failed again for to be fair, completely different reasons. This isn't some problem that they failed to address. This is a different issue. And because it is not a design issue, the previous failure was a problem with the second stage, right, Chris? A sort of a thermal protection system problem.
Yeah, it was the forward dome on
Yes.
on the second stage is what gave way shortly after second stage ignition on the July 2019 flight, Vega Flight 15 that failed, or Vega Vehicle 15, or yeah, Vega Vehicle 15 that failed. Yeah, and this one, we got through all 3 of the solid propellant stages. It looked like I mean, it just looked like things were going so well for them into flight, even during the initial portions of 4th stage or upper stage flight. But then, yeah, that AVUM upper stage that was just wired and configured improperly. So yeah, a quality control issue here for sure.
There's
oh my gosh, there's the controversial Christian hair.
Sorry, Chris.
Why? I thought we were past this. Yes.
So
yeah, but
so that's
it's a quality control issue, which does raise some cross-vehicle concerns, but not in the manner of there being technical considerations, right? Like we wouldn't be worried from a technical perspective about Ariane 5 or the Soyuz vehicles that Arianespace uses on there, but we would potentially be concerned about the quality control elements. So very easily identifying this as that very early on, that's where the investigation is going to focus, not just on the Vega vehicle and the AVUM upper stage, but also across the board with Arianespace. Because even if this was a wiring issue at the manufacturing facility before it shipped, they missed it when it got here too. Right. So there are definitely some things they'll want to look at. As to when Vega will fly again, quality control issues are usually a lot easier to fix than technical issues. As we saw earlier this year with Rocket Lab, where they had a little wiring thing that they very quickly figured out and traced it to, and were very quick to point out that this is not something we could have ever found on the ground. It was only something that would have presented in flight, but as soon as it presented in flight, they knew immediately how to fix it. And they were launching again in 2 months or something like that? Less than 2 months?
Just a couple months.
Yeah. So probably not as long of a stand down as before, but it certainly doesn't help coming off the heels of Flight 15.
Right. All right, and that was the question there. You were answering it, so I just put that question. Chad actually asking how long you think it'll be before Ariane can launch the Vega again. So Chad, we did get that question. We were sort of answering it in line there on the Vega launch. But we are down to about 17 minutes left in the show here. And we do have one of the most popular topics to still talk about, Starship.
Yeah, that
So we ready to do some
rocket
Starship?
down in South Texas that I think people are a pretty big fan of.
That one?
Well, it doesn't look very shiny in that picture, but that's a gorgeous photo.
You said shiny, and this is the one I brought up. The communication, though. Anyways, let's talk a little bit about Starship here. I know there's a ton of questions. Again, we realize that some people reading the stream title were like, oh, a lot going on. Starship's launching today. Starship not launching today. They were aware of. Not today. No.
Soon.
Yeah. So what is going? I got a ton of stuff from Boca Chica. I'm just going to start putting up videos and letting them roll while
I'll give a brief
talk.
overview, and I know we'll have tons of questions, so we'll just get into that. But basically, we have the Starship SN8 vehicle, which is the one in this photo, at the launch site preparing for another static fire test ahead of its 15-kilometer flight. There's one test left, that 3-engine static fire. They're getting ready for that. There are some road closures up and about for later this coming week, and then there are road closures for the flight itself starting no earlier than November 30th. So that's the current timeline for when Starship SN8 can take its flight. And again, this will be the first time a Starship prototype flies to super high altitude, and practices that belly flip landing maneuver and relighting the Raptors in flight and things like that. So it'll be a huge step forward for the program. Even if it's not successful, it'll still be very useful for all the data they'll get. There's obviously a lot of risk in that flight, but if it goes well, that would be even better. Um, so that is what's coming up for SN8. They've also got the SN9 vehicle, which is almost identical to SN8, the only difference being that SN9 is entirely out of the newer 304L stainless steel alloy, whereas SN8 still has some of the old alloy mixed in with it. But otherwise, the design is pretty much identical. And regardless of what happens with SN8, SN9 will fly afterwards, either retrying the flight that SN8 was unable to achieve, or doing it again like they did with SN5 and SN6 for repetition and getting even more data. So we know they just stacked the SN9 nose cone, I think either today or yesterday. So they're getting ready to prepare that vehicle and get that ready to go. And then we've seen parts for I think up to Starship SN15 lying around the
Hmm.
production site, which is just again absurd. But they've got different components lying about. We finally found parts of SN13, which for some reason we had thought they had skipped for some reason because we never saw any parts, but we finally found some. Or I keep saying we. Mary found some. Mary's the one doing all the work.
There we go.
All of these videos and photos are from Mary as always. And let's see, is that might be the SN13 part, but
This one was labeled SN15,
oh,
SN15 common
SN15.
dome
There you go.
sleeve.
So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
one of the newest
It's,
parts to come out.
I mean,
But
y'all can see when I'm scrubbing on the video there. I know
yeah,
y'all can see that. It's it's not like, oh, let me ready this up. I'm literally just trying to find what I'm trying to show y'all. So keep going, Thomas. Sorry.
yeah, sure. I mean, so that's the basic overview. You got a bunch of vehicles kind of in various stages of production. SN8 is getting ready for a static fire ahead of its finally its high altitude flight at the launch site, and then there is SN9, the nose cone. This video was taken before they installed the final sort of top portion canard slash flat thing, whatever SpaceX is referring to that control surface as. They did
The
install that,
flappy
and then
part.
they yeah, the flappy part.
The
There you go.
flappy part.
The nose cone has then since been stacked onto the nose cone sort of barrel section. So the entire nose cone section is now stacked, in addition to the sort of tank section with the engine section. And so those two halves might get mated together in the high bay and rolled out all as one, or they could do the same thing they did with SN8 and roll them out separately and stack them at the launch site. I'm not sure. We're going to have to wait and see. But that's where Boca Chica stands currently.
All right. So I am just going to let some videos roll in the background while we do some Q&A about just about 15 minutes left in the show here. Hey, Kylie Williams, welcome to Capcom, by the way. Thank
Nice.
you so
Oh,
much
nice.
for the support there. We really appreciate that. And then Demetrius Citrellis, let's go with. This is about the NASA Lunar Lander program, of which Starship is part of that HLS, the Human
Yes.
Landing System, right?
Hmm.
So we know there's multiple companies in there. Just really quickly on this, and we'll get a lot of Starship-centric questions. Is NASA narrowing that down? Will NASA have more than one thing? Like, could Starship and the national team fly, or how does that work? Really quickly.
Sure. So in January will be the down select period where they take of the three companies that have been in the program initially, which includes SpaceX with Starship, the national team led by Blue Origin, and the Dynetics human landing system. All of those three companies are currently in their development programs, and in January, NASA will select up to two of those to continue into further stages of development and actually fly flight tests. They can select two, they can select one, they can also select zero if none of them have made satisfactory progress. I think it is a safe
Gotcha.
bet that they will not select zero, but that's kind of a worst case scenario. But either one or two, depending on how they like the progress from those companies. At least one company, though, will be excluded from the program going forward after January. So that's what's coming up next.
All right.
And
And
on
y'all,
that
again,
note, and this will
go ahead.
probably transition into some Starship questions, we have some photos about because they're building what looks like a mock-up for this lunar Starship sort of human landing system thing. And oh, never mind, there's some video right on cue. I did not plan that, I swear. So this is, you might want to pause this, Da, so we can see it. You can see underneath there's some sort of mock-up of like a bunk situation. You can see a ladder into like a bunk of some kind. This is
Yep.
underneath the nose cone that they painted in the human landing system scheme with the NASA worm logo and
Ah.
the American flag. They've started putting some stuff underneath there, and I think this is just more signs that SpaceX is developing sort of a low fidelity mock-up of what the cabin of the human landing system will look like. We've seen the two other HLS companies do similar things, mock-ups of how the crew cabin will look, because that helps them get feedback from NASA astronauts who are working on these missions to get feedback on that. So that is, I think, what we're seeing down there in Boca Chica, which is super cool. We've also seen NASA astronauts flying over Boca Chica in the T-34 training aircraft. I don't think that's a coincidence, if I had to guess.
Well, right, and that's part of what I was going to add is, we saw the national team deliver their ascent descent element mock-up right to the Johnson Space Center. Well, SpaceX isn't going to deliver a full-size mock-up of Starship to Johnson Space Center. So it would make sense that part of that training, part of that initial feedback, which is what a large part of the contract here is designed for, right? This would make sense, right? Of working with crews about like, okay, this makes more sense. No, this makes more sense in the early phases of design, so you can get some of those global elements of feedback before you really start digging into your design.
Gotcha. So do we want to run through some of the super chats? We're down to 9 minutes left, and we have a ton of questions here. I said super chats, I meant questions.
Let's do
Super
it.
chats and questions. Let's do it.
Let's speed run some of these. Let's see how many questions we can get through before the end of the show. And I'm just gonna roll this hand grenade right into the room. The big one. So when is the 15-kilometer hop? Like, is there a date expected? Do we have anything based on road closures or anything that we know that we could guess? Go.
The road closures indicate that SpaceX is targeting no earlier than November 30th, but since that's a few days away, that date is still fluid. Wouldn't necessarily call that a target date yet. That's just the no earlier than possibility based on road closures.
I think we had, there's the
Exactly.
Boca
Yeah, there you go.
roads.
And so this
Take me
doesn't show
home.
the notes that come with the road closures. There are also closures on the 23rd, 24th, and 25th. That's probably for something different. I don't remember if we know exactly what that's for, but the ones that were scheduled for the 30th, December 1st, and December 2nd are marked as 15-kilometer flight closures. So
Gotcha.
that's why we know.
Alrighty. So that's what we've got right now. Again, very fluid out there. It's an experimental program, and they are working on it. The dates are always going to change, but you know how you can know when it's going to hop? Follow the channel here, turn on the
That's true.
notifications, because if it's hopping, I guarantee you that we'll have a stream going.
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, Alex Lando asked, what's your plan for broadcasting the SN8 15-kilometer hop? So absolutely, positively, not only the hop, but all the testing up to it here on this channel. If you follow, like, subscribe, turn on notifications, whatever, follow on Twitter, we do cover all of those things if it's something that we can roll a camera out to. So we've got Boca Chica Gal out there bringing us all the fantastic video, and we will absolutely try to make sure we get that covered for you. Let's see here. How how do you think the SN8 hop will go? Good, or will we see a new crater from Mini Stage Studios? Chris, what do you think? Starship SN8 nails it the first try, installs a new water tank out there at by water tank, I mean hole in the ground.
This is such a new design. This is such a new way to land a vehicle and bring it home. It would not surprise me for the first one not to succeed. I think, I think getting the Raptor to relight in the air is going to be a huge success. If they can get to that part of it, then I think SN8, will have passed with flying colors in that regard. I don't personally expect it to be back on the ground. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
Hope I'm wrong.
Well, it'll be on the ground one way or the other.
Well, it will be on the ground, yes. Let me put it that way. Standing intact. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the one that's not standing intact when this is done. Just from the variety of things we've seen happen with it. But also, again, it's such a new way of bringing it. There's a lot of model validation that has to go into it. And don't get me wrong, SpaceX engineers are phenomenal in what they're doing, but we really need to start thinking of these like the very first Falcon 9 landings. Where, yes, they've got all of that experience in the landing software to draw from, but the Falcon 9s also aren't going from 70 degrees flipping down like a pendulum under retro propulsion after skydiving through the atmosphere. So it's just very, very different.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Thomas, how about you? 30 seconds. Go.
Okay. I really hope that I'm wrong. I hope that this prediction is incorrect. I've been wrong about SN5 hop and Star Hopper hops before, so there's probably I will be wrong. But my current bet is that SN8 does not land in one piece. It's gonna crater or splash down in the Gulf of Mexico, one of those, and it'll take another flight before they nail that. But my guess is new crater.
Thomas in 27 seconds. Nice, Thomas. Good job there.
Did you give me that clock, or is that in reference to me?
I did not. No, I'm trying to get through as many questions as I can before the end of the stream here. I figured I'd hold it up. Let's see here. Here's one. This is sort of a hardball almost. Why is SpaceX suddenly having problems with the well-tested Raptor engine? So do we think that they're having problems with the Raptor engine, or what do we think?
No, this is a
going
common
on?
misconception though, and there's a tweet that we can pull up if you want to, Das, that'll help answer this question. So they recently had a problem with a Raptor engine, but it wasn't Raptor's fault. So the SN8 static fire, which recently they lost pneumatics because of a severed avionics line, that wasn't the fault of Raptor. The launch pad has undergone so many different test firings that literally the concrete at the base of the pad flew up and severed an avionics line, which is why they lost control of all the pneumatic valves on SN8 during that most recent static fire test. The Raptor itself is not the problem here. Now, what it's worth noting, however, is that yes, they could add a flame deflector, all this stuff to the launch pad to prevent this. That only solves the problem here at the launch sites. It doesn't solve the problem on landing pads, and it doesn't solve the problem when you're landing on the moon or Mars. So it is worth mentioning, and Elon has been hesitant, they don't really want to add a flame deflector, and I understand why. It's because you don't get one of those when you land on the moon and Mars, etc., or if you're coming back and landing on landing pads. So it makes more sense to design the vehicle to be able to withstand landing on less kind of prepared surfaces.
Right.
So I think, and the Elon tweet says they're going to add some more shielding to the engine section to protect those kind of assets, and they're also going to add some more infrastructure to the pad itself, so that the places where they're launching and landing over and over again don't encounter those kinds of issues.
Right, and I'm going to jump in on this one really quickly. This is something that I've been saying for a long time. Starship is not a good design to land on the moon or Mars. It's just not. I'm going to toss this out
under
there.
these Raptor engines, right? And that's why
without
the
an
lunar
unprepared
Starship has something different.
Without an unprepared pad, right? So when Elon first started talking about Starship, I was like, what is this, really? It'll destroy itself when it tries to land. In fact, there's a huge body of research. Dr. Phil Metzger out of University of Florida has done all of this modeling all the way back to the Apollo missions, how the thrust impingement on the lunar regolith, and he literally predicted that the exhaust plume would cause the ground to ricochet back up and destroy parts of the engine. That's what all of his work predicted, and he said that Starship was going to have problems doing this because it was going to happen. The engine was going to hit the ground and it was going to reflect back up, and all the energy that water suppression and flame trenches and thrust directors and all those things, that was going to happen on Starship, and it was going to cause problems. And here on a prepared surface, right, that Martite, whatever, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. On the prepared surface, we actually saw the thrust from the static fire ricochet shrapnel back up and destroy parts of the engine. I've said for a long time that this is a big problem with Starship landing, and nobody wants to hear it. Now, they'll get it figured out. I think they'll get it figured out, but I was not surprised to hear from Elon that there was damage to the Starship because of this, because it was modeled and predicted that that's exactly what was going to happen. So they'll get it figured out. SpaceX is not dumb. They're not going to keep going down this. They may have even predicted that this was going to happen. Right. I don't know, on the prepared surface, they really thought that was going to happen, but SpaceX knows that this is a thing. Dr. Phil Metzger is actually contracted from SpaceX a while back because he said, I can't talk about it because I'm contracted from SpaceX. And he provided a bunch of research to them about this. And it's something that they're going to have to figure out if Starship in any variant is going to land or take off from unprepared surfaces. I had to jump that in. I know I'm super passionate about this.
No, you're good.
But we've been screaming this for the longest time. Like, wait a second, you almost need something smaller to go there first. Land, prepare a surface for the big dog starships.
Right.
That's
now to jump in here, and I'm not playing devil's advocate. I'm glad you brought up the like send something smaller there to create pads in the beginning, because now correct me if I'm wrong, Thomas, but I was under the impression that the lunar Starship did not ignite its Raptor engines on or near the lunar surface, and that's why the thrusters are mounted so much higher up the vehicle.
Exactly.
For
so
that.
for lunar
But-
Starship,
so
they have those
Moon,
top-mounted
right.
thrusters.
But okay, so good. That was my first question, because then yes, your other thing makes a lot of sense to us. And what's the one thing we see in all the SpaceX renders of starships doing all these things on the lunar and Martian surfaces? Where are they taking off from?
Pads.
Concrete. Yeah, pads. Exactly.
Mooncrete, Marscrete, whichever.
Marscrete.
Chris, you're absolutely right. You remember when that image came out? I don't have that render handy, but the one, and it's like, oh, are those lights coming down from the top? Wow, I don't know. At Elon, are those lights? And I'm like, those can't be lights. Those are thrusters, because it cannot land that way under its main engines. They have to have, or it may be able to, but careful, they have to have some sort of thrusters. And when I saw that render of those thrusters up high, looking like, all right, let's get slowed down, and then let's switch over to those top thrusters. You got it? Thank you. I'll bring that up right now. I was like, yes, that's fantastic, because we knew they were going to have to solve for that. And like I said, SpaceX isn't dumb. SpaceX hires a lot of very, very smart people. They don't spend all this money on this stuff without doing problems like figuring out the solutions to problems like that. I'm bringing this picture up while I'm talking, but there's the picture.
There it is, yes.
Of the thrusters mounted up there. And here you can see those main engines are not on for the landing. It's those higher thrusters that not only give you a little bit of a cosine there, so the thrust isn't hitting directly, but you get that vertical separation, so you're not disturbing the regolith, you're not reflecting shrapnel back into your engine bay, basically.
And you can do that on the moon because gravity is so low, you don't need the thrust of the massive Raptor engines. You can get away with some smaller thrusters being your final descent engines.
Right. And now this isn't the case once you get to Mars.
On Mars, exactly.
Mars, you definitely need the Raptor engines, but this is where, when we're saying about what you were saying too, Das, about like Elon's comment of we'll design it, we'll shore it up, because ideally I think that based on the renders, right, that's what they really want. They want the pads, they want the surfaces eventually, but you've also got to be realistic that and I'm not laughing because I'm saying, I'm laughing because it's a realistic fact that you've just got to deal with these things in a chaotic environment and try to build your vehicle to survive it,
Honestly, I should have timed myself on that. My rant was well over 30 seconds. I apologize. I apologize, y'all. I saw this, and then I was sitting there like, no way, it reflected back just like they said it was going to do. Let me see if we can grab one or two more questions here. And let's see. So to wrap that up, not a problem with the Raptor engine. That was something with the pad infrastructure and that sort of stuff where we got that shrapnel ricocheting back up.
Yes.
Let's see here. Are there any scheduled rocket launches coming up from Virginia? Do we have anything happening at Antares out there?
Nope. Next Antares is next year.
Right, yeah.
Next year.
And so Rocket Lab's debut flight from Wallops is next year. Next Antares is next year. There's also a Minotaur from Wallops, but that's also next year. So not for a few months, yeah.
Gotcha. And again, I'm truly speedrunning these. How long do you think until we get back into the Boeing tests for their crewed capsule?
Q1 of next year, right?
Q1 of next year, yeah.
Q1 of next year. Thomas, that was Thomas Agate. That was for you. Q1 of next year.
Cool name, Thomas.
Yeah, cool name. Johnny Thunder, actually. No SLS talk today. Green Run, SLS, latest news on that.
We do have a little bit. NASA did give a new target date for the Green Run Hotfire, right?
Yes.
Maybe?
Yes. Sorry. Yes. No, sorry. I thought you were going to answer that in one go, Thomas. Sorry. Yes, the Green Run wet dress rehearsal is the week of the 7th, and if all goes well there, then the actual hot fire will be the week of the 21st.
There you go. I didn't remember the dates.
Okay.
This is almost an opinion sort of thing, and we know how those are. Rob Highfield, do you think there's a chance SpaceX would continue its HLS program even if it's not selected? SpaceX is going to keep flying Starships, y'all think?
Oh, SpaceX will keep flying Starships. Lunar? That's a better question. I don't know what they do with their lunar program. I mean, they're pretty set on Mars, so if they were to somehow not be selected, I would not anticipate that being their driving force behind Starship development at that point.
Gotcha.
I think, brief answer for me, I think even if they're not selected, I think SpaceX still wants to land Starships on the moon, one way or the other. And I think they've learned a lot from the HLS development program, like the thrusters that we're seeing in this render. So I think they would continue development of a Starship variant designed to land on the moon. But I also think that of the three HLS providers, and I know a lot of people disagree with me on this. I think Starship is the one I am most confident will be selected by NASA. We'll see what happens in January, but I'll be very surprised if they're not selected.
Yeah, or early next year, when these decisions are made. Yeah, I mean, we know one won't be, and I just have a hard time personally seeing how Draper competes against SpaceX and the national team. I just don't.
Dynetics, you mean, right?
Dynetics, yes, not Draper.
Yeah.
Draper, yes. Dynetics. Sorry. There's a Draper, but not.
But Draper's on the national team.
But not
so.
Draper's on the national team. Yes. And Dynetics. I have a hard time seeing how Dynetics would be chosen over the national team and SpaceX at this point.
Gotcha.
We'll see.
But we'll see.
We'll end on this one. This was another bit of big space news that we did not mention at all so far. So our last question for an NSF Live today: any thoughts on the proposed demolition of Arecibo, the radio telescope?
Thank you for
not related to
ending on
anything we
this.
talked about, but that's an important topic to cover real quick. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you for ending on that. I added that to the chat in hopes that this would be how we end. A devastating loss to astronomy to lose the Arecibo Observatory. Unfortunately, there really just isn't a great way to fix it in its current condition. However, what I would say is demolition doesn't mean walking away from it. Demolition doesn't mean we won't build something else or come up with something else. In the end, it is a loss, but I personally, from what I've seen, and I haven't delved real deep into it, there just doesn't seem to be viable options, and it seems to be too dangerous to get in there and fix it the way that we need to. Thomas, have you?
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. It's incredibly sad. I know that we'll find another way to continue the great work that has been done at Arecibo in the past, whether that's building a new one or finding some other solution. But I mean, yeah, it's heartbreaking. I know that this kind of thing is hard to replace, but I know the scientific community will make sure that this science is not lost.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So again, that's a huge thing. That's one of the famous things. Like if you've seen these big shots of this dish built into literally a mountainside, like a valley that's filled with a dish. It's like 50. How old is it? 60 years. How
the
long has it been in
Arecibo
operation?
Observatory.
Yeah. It's been producing results for a long time. I know that.
Yeah, the Arecibo Observatory was. Let me see. It was commissioned on November 1st, 1963. So it's over 50 years old. It's almost 60 years old, actually. Yeah. So for those of you who are unfamiliar precisely with what we're talking about, some of the support cables snapped and severely damaged the bowl of the observatory. You can see the damage in that photograph right there, but it has also made it way too precarious to get people out there, and a bunch of structural engineers who have been studying it, and the way that the cables and everything failed said, basically, there's no way to save it. Very sad, but worth mentioning, China has a bigger one that they're in the process of completing. So, the world itself didn't lose. China had actually already built a bigger one. So haven't completely lost it, but hopefully they'll rebuild.
We'll just have to get Elon to load up a couple starships and put one on the far side of the moon for us.
That's what I'm saying,
right?
Gus. Thank you.
Arecibo 2, Lunar Boogaloo or whatever.
Yes.
So, all right, y'all. Well, that is going to bring us to the end of our NASA Spaceflight live stream for today. Chris and Thomas, thank y'all so much for putting up with me as I randomly bring things up on the screen and y'all talk about it.
Always a pleasure.
Indeed does.
Our subject matter experts for today over on this side. Which way did I point? Okay, Thomas Berghardt, reporter, live stream host extraordinaire for NASASpaceflight. You can find him on Twitter at TGMetsFan, and I can actually make that a play on the screen if I click in the right place. What's your name start with? A, B, C, D, E, F, T. Okay, there it is. And there's Thomas's info, which should appear over there. Ha! Look at that. Thomas, thank you so much for the time and the insight today.
As always, happy to be here, and I'll be back tomorrow night, hopefully, for a Starlink launch from Cape Canaveral. So see you then.
All right. And then over on the other side, Chris Gebhardt, assistant managing editor for NASASpaceflight. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. Always a pleasure.
My pleasure indeed.
I'm delaying while I also scroll to the interface and click on the thing that makes your information appear. There it is. Whew. You can find Chris on Twitter at ChrisG_NSF right there. A fantastic follow if you want to keep up with space news, because not only does he do the live streams here, Chris is constantly putting out articles and editing articles and all of the other stuff that NASA Spaceflight does. So a lot of people are like, oh yeah, the live streams, but there is an entire website filled with information and articles and all that sort of stuff that's coming out. So Chris, thank you so much for everything you do to help keep people informed on what's happening with spaceflight.
I wouldn't have it any other way. Dream job, as they say.
You're not even kidding, that's for sure. And then lastly here, my name is this, and I click on this in order to display it like that. All right, cool. I'm John Galloway with NASASpaceflight. In the live stream control room here, you can see me looking at all of my different monitors here as I try to bring up images and I talk. We don't do it like a normal news crew where there's somebody dedicated to sound and somebody dedicated to video and somebody no, that's me.
It's just us.
It's just me. I got to click on stuff, and sometimes you see my browser window. What are you going to do? We do really appreciate everybody showing up today. I don't think we've missed any super chats. Goldie TV actually came through as a membership there, but it really is those memberships and super chats and all the different ways that y'all support what we do that allow us to keep doing this. So thank y'all so much for letting us have the opportunity, like Chris said, to have literally dream jobs here. I'm going to put this up on the screen really quickly. Our two top tier membership levels, the launch directors and the flight engineers. Those are membership levels that go above and beyond with the support for all of the different things that we do to bring y'all coverage and to share these spaceflight experiences with you. So launch directors, flight engineers, thank y'all so much for the support and the trust you put in NASA spaceflight so that we can continue to bring these on. You know, that thing doesn't appear unless I click on it. Hang on. That's
okay,
awkward.
so sorry, I'm laughing because someone in chat just pointed out that the National Science Foundation, NSF, is, you know, the Arecibo Observatory, and we're NSF talking about another NSF's telescope.
We are not in charge of Arecibo.
Also, apologies, because reading chat, I think I messed up and accidentally said... radar and radio telescope between the China and the Arecibo observatories. So my apologies. I don't even remember saying it wrong, but based on chat, I totally did. So my apologies. Yes.
That's why you just have to never stop talking and talk so fast that you make another mistake that they try to correct before they even get around to the first mistake. It's good. Y'all, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, Thomas and Chris are subject matter experts here. Y'all are fantastic. Chat, y'all are fantastic as well. It's 43. We're 13 minutes over when we're supposed to end this, and we actually started on time once. So this is the end of today's NASA Spaceflight live coverage. Look for us tomorrow with a coverage of hopefully that Starlink. In the meantime, if you want, you can go over to Fleet Cam and continue watching what's happening on with processing or that flight coming out of the Cape. And we will see you nerds. Did I forget anything? Nope. Later.
Chamber pressure looks good. Following up. Roger, roll with planet. Water towers fly! Flight downside, speed off. Speed off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.